at the Tennessee State Board of Education. We are here to talk about our concerns as it relates to special education in the great state of Tennessee. If we haven't met, I'm Mayer Cunningham, special education boss, training everyone that sits at the 504 IEP table for successful student outcomes. We have advocates that work for us all over the nation, and the calls that we get out of this state are egregious. And it's not a COVID issue. It's not an online issue. It's not a teacher shortage issue. It's a choice. And the people at the state education agency are very aware of that. The people at administrations and districts are very aware of that. And we're here to bring life to it and language to it so that teachers are supported. At the end of the day, this is about kind of two people, right? The teachers and the service providers and the aides and the students with the disabilities. The bulk of the calls that we get are from teachers. And so the first problem is we don't support our teachers, right? We have great teachers that come to staff and they say, hey, there's a problem with Sally. There's a problem with Joe. There's a problem with Billy. And they're told by the principals, you're doing a great job, just go back to your room, right? And so we have a country, a state of illiterate adults, because we don't intervene for special education. It's not a priority to us. It's very much a priority in school districts for other things, like paying the admin at the district level 85% of the total school budget. That's a priority. Building coliseums, which are football stadiums, that we have 7 home games, that's a priority. But we don't make kids learning to read, do math, and write a priority. And it's unacceptable, and we're not gonna let it go anymore. We're gonna give a language to it. So the first violation that shows up in Tennessee is a violation of child fine. It's a federal requirement, I don't know, for the last 47 years, since 1975, that the school district, not the parent, that the school district has a legal federal obligation. It's called child fine, that we identify, that we locate, and we evaluate children with suspected disabilities. Notice I didn't say confirmed disabilities. Notice I didn't say that parents come to the school and they beg for you to give them intervention, and they plead with you and you send them away. Or worse, you tell them in Tennessee, we're going to keep an eye on your kid. We're not interested in you keeping an eye on our kids. We're interested in you in educating them. And when they rise to the level of needing another intervention besides general ed, you have a legal obligation under 504 as a civil right, and a federal obligation, which you are funded for under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, to provide them that education. And so teachers can't refer. Teachers in Tennessee, we can't refer. The teachers have to give the parents a note and go, listen, your child needs help, but I can't say anything, I'll get in trouble. And the teachers who actually come to the parents and they say there's an area of need, when we get to the meetings, the teachers can't say anything. You know why? Because they've been hushed by their, don't say anything. Don't say anything. You know how we know this? Because 2/3 of the people that train with us nationally are school-based members who are looking for a way to serve kiddos in education, which is the reason they went to school. And this behavior is part of the mass exodus. It's not attorneys. It's not parents, certainly not advocates, but admin knows what they're doing, even though they're funded to provide special education. So we have children that are illiterate and can't read, and in kindergarten, we say there's a need. In first grade, in second grade, we're gonna keep an eye on them, and by 4th grade, it's too late. You know why? Because that student has already taught themselves strategies to self-manage their disability that you can't unteach, and we knew there was a problem. Or worse, the most egregious thing that we do here in the great state of Tennessee is we say, oh, you cannot have an evaluation. Absolutely not. You're not going to have an evaluation for special education. We have to, say it with me, we have to do RTI first. That's funny because that's a federal violation. If you look at the OSEP letters, the Office of Special Education Programs, a federal entity, there's a little letter in January 22, 2011, which says a guideline to the United States of America. RTI is never a reason to stop testing. And I have kids that I serve that is so sad that when I get them, they've been in RTI for years. 5 days a week, they've been in RTI. So what you've done is you've made the general ed teacher be the special education teacher in the room, because you won't do your baseline obligation and provide a full individualized evaluation. We delay evaluations, right? A parent wants an evaluation. Sure. We delay them. Just give us a few more weeks. The lady that does that is out. Oh, you can't have that evaluation right now. You have to prove why you get that. You've got to prove it. Because I've read the law. It doesn't say you have to prove anything. and related services, if you can prove it. No, it doesn't say that. Or better, we sit in meetings with the IEP leadership, and they tell us that we have to justify our meetings. We don't have to justify anything. The student is in need of special education and related services, and these evaluations will identify or eliminate if there is a need. Parents don't know that they have a voice. Parents don't know that they have procedural safeguards, federal and state rights. We just slide that little piece of paper over and say, sign for this. We never explain to the parent their procedural rights, ever. Do we? No, and they have them. And their rights are being violated every day in the state of Tennessee. Now in Tennessee, we've got this great new thing going on. Now listen in, mom and dad. Your kid has been sent to a learning lab, right? That's the new thing in Tennessee. We send kids to learning labs. That is a joke, and it's inappropriate, and it's offensive. We have one special education teacher. We send in all grade levels, and we just shove them into one room so that we get out of our obligation of pushing special education services or pull out special education services. Both violating students' LRE, both of them. So we've just eliminated our obligations. And we've got more egregious since COVID because people don't know. And people do know. And parents and teachers and families are not going to tolerate this. There is plenty of funding in this state Department of Education. There's plenty of federal funding. There's plenty of state funding. There's plenty of grant money that you could write for. But patting yourself on the back for letting some 7th grader have an evaluation for dyslexia is unacceptable. And how do parents know if their IEP is being implemented? They ask me that all the time. This is what you need to do, mom and dad and guardians and grandparents. You need to ask for RDCS. RDCS, raw data collection sheets. At the end of every grading period, I'm going to notify the school that I will be picking up the raw data collection sheets. What are those? Those are data that you collected on IEP goals. It's your federal obligation and state obligation, and sheets of accommodations. Both of those have to be filled out by teachers. All of your accommodation sheets have to be filled out. That's a civil right. If they're not, I would file a violation with the U.S. Department of Education Office of Civil Rights, and you have to collect data on IEP goals. At the very bottom of your IEP goals, there's a little phrase down there that says implementer. That is the person that's legally responsible for implementing the goal, working on it, delivering that specially designed instruction, and collecting data. So I want you to email the school and say, hey, I just want you to know, at the end of the grading period, I will be picking up my students' raw data collection sheets. Additionally, this not letting parents see their kids' work is baloney. Like, you're kidding, right? It's their procedural right. Any parent and a child in school, they can see their child's educational problem. Oh, we can't send that home. We can't send that home. Of course you can send it home. How am I going to know what he needs to work on, a tutor or anything else? So please don't fall for that, right? Stop picking up the telephone. Stop picking up the telephone. Have you noticed this, like, rise of phone calls? Come pick up your kid. Come pick up your kid. Come pick up your kid. He's not behaving. Good. Before you pick up your kid, make sure that they're going to write him up and say that they can't provide him an educational benefit. It's the school's obligation, duty, and responsibility to educate your child in any educational area, functionally, behaviorally, emotionally, socially, academically, language, communicative, and all related services. Stop picking up your child. What you're doing is two things. You're teaching learned dependency, and then you've recused the school of their obligation to teach your child. If what your child needs is not available on their campus, it's available at another campus. If it's not available at another campus, there's a thing called out-of-district day placement. And every school district in America has it. It's called a Continuum of Services. Whether your child is in juvenile, a hospital, at home, a psychiatric unit, or on the district property, unless you've unenrolled them, this state has a legal obligation to provide your student special education and related services that are in their IEP. Stop agreeing to this ridiculous remote learning plan. It's not a thing. It is not a thing. It's not codified at the federal level, certainly not codified at the state level. We don't plan an IEP for something that may never happen. That's ridiculous, right? We have to make you sign that. No. If you disagree with somebody at the IEP meeting, I want you to say this. Whenever they tell you it's a policy, it's a guideline, it's a requirement, super. Please provide that to me in writing by close of business. You know what? Those emails, they never show up, right? So we have got to stop lying to parents. We've got to stop doing things that are handicapping children. Our job as educators is to equip them. We have the ability, but we've got to get out of these patterns. Predetermination in the state, it's really high. It's really high. We think because we slide the parents a piece of paper and tell them to sign it, oh, and you got to sign today. I mean, you have to sign today. I mean, it has to be signed today. No, it doesn't. So you sliding a piece of paper to a parent has nothing to do with collaboration. IDEA was built on the consensus model. It doesn't mean we come to consensus, but it certainly means that I can describe your position and my position. You telling us what the present levels are, you telling us what the IEP goals are, you telling us a placement, it's called predetermination. It was predetermination in 1975 and it still is today. You also have to know that you have rights under how to hold the school accountable. When we're delivering a special education product and it's not working, we have a legal obligation to get back to the table. LRE says that we provide an education to students with disabilities in the least restrictive environment. General ed is not the least restrictive environment. It's the most appropriate place to implement your students' IEP goals, right? And so once we've delivered those supplementary aids and services for a period of time and it's not working, we make adjustments. We don't just yank a kid out. We make adjustments for them to be successful. So is there anything in the law that makes schools collect data, which is kind of hysterical to me? Yeah, there's a little thing at the very end. You know, when you're sitting in your meeting, they're like, oh, the principal looks up and he goes, oh, is it my turn? I'm gonna read the what? The assurances. Do you feel assured? Because my parents, the teachers I work with in the state, last thing they feel is assured. Do you know why the LEA representative reads the assurances? That's their obligation as they receive federal funds. So unless you understand every component of the front page, from eligibility to evaluations to the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, to the least restrictive environment, accommodations, IEP goals, ESY, and every single supplement, do not sign the document. If you ask the school to provide you information about your procedural rights, did you know they would have to read it to you? Has that ever happened? It's never happened. So you only have rights if you, one, know what they are, and number two, invoke them. It is time for people to invoke them. There are a lot of wonderful people that work at the Tennessee Department of Education. I've talked to many of them, but they don't know if there's a problem if parents don't appropriately complain at the state level. See, school districts that are awesome, but the few that aren't awesome are like really bad franchises. And I don't think they're going to call in here and say, hey, I'm not giving anybody their Chick-fil-A sauce. So unless parents complain in a way that's legal and effectual, there won't be change in Tennessee. You've got to do that for you and your students in a way that's correct, right? So the director of Metro Nashville County, the special director of Nashville County, said teachers do not have to keep data. I have seen several inter-office emails from school district special education directors. Please send that to me, and I will take care of that at the federal level with the U.S. Department of Education Office of Civil Rights. What would be the point of an IEP, an individualized education program, if you're not monitoring it somehow? Do we not measure a general ed student success on the product that we've given them? And what you're doing, administrators, is you're putting the teachers in the front lines, right? If there's a due process or there's a federal negotiation to settle, special ed director's not going to be up there. Principal's not going to be up there. You know who's going to be on the hook? Teachers, paraprofessionals, aides, service providers, because somebody told you. So if you think that's the truth, educators, I would reach out to the Tennessee Department of Education and confirm that information that you got from your special education director is in fact gospel, right? If you don't collect data, if there are no data collection sheets, then I would file with the U.S. Department of Education Office of Civil Rights. While it's a much longer process, I find that in some states you get a lot more traction. Also, you have to remember that parents have the right, the federal right, for the parent concerns for educating, for enhancing the education of their child goes inside of the present levels. It goes inside of the present levels. Not the case conference notes, not the deliberations, not if Miss Susie wants to write it down. And if they don't write it down, you have the legal obligation and responsibility to respond with your own deliberations, identifying what the violations are. We want your kids to have an amazing special education product, and most of them do, but the schools are driven by the principal. The schools are driven by the special education director. And when you have one that's not in compliance, that ruins everybody in the school district. And those kids that don't receive an appropriate special education product are going to be at a very high risk to be in the special ed to prison pipeline. That's just the truth. If you cannot read, it is very unlikely that you'll be able to hold a job. And there are kids that cannot read at a third grade level that are graduating high school, right? Because what do? We just pass them through. We just pass them through. We let them test 52 times. Just keep testing, just keep testing, just keep testing. Because God bless America, all hail the state test, right? Because we really care about the state test. How many of the adults today have been asked how you did on the state test? How many of the adults today have been asked, hey, what'd you graduate in your class? Nobody cares. I care that children cannot read in Tennessee. I care that adults can't read in Tennessee. But we just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And it stops today. We're not going to put up with it. We will keep coming here. We will keep doing lives because children have a right to be educated in general ed and special ed, whatever their need is. And when we give kids in special ed the supports and services that they're due, because we're not out here asking for extra. We're out here asking for baseline. And parents have to beg. Parents are going through 6, 7 IEP meetings, losing their jobs because we're not going to give them the baseline of what they deserve. It's unacceptable. Parents are afraid to say anything because there's retaliation. Teachers are afraid to say anything because I promise you there's retaliation. Probably 20% of my clients are special ed or staff members at school districts that can't get their own child services for special education. How is that even fathomable that we put up with that? And so the thing is, your friends at the Tennessee Department of Education absolutely know everything that's going on in the district level, right? Because you can pull the numbers. You can pull their performance numbers. And it's not okay, and we're not gonna let kids go without an education. Child find has got to be stopped and identified in Tennessee. The school district has an obligation to go and knock on doors in your neighborhood to see if kids are struggling with learning. Have you ever seen that in your neighborhood? No? Maybe they're coming next week. Here's what your child doesn't get back. Time. And let me talk about this ridiculous 504. I can tell you right now, if your child's on a 504, you're being robbed. You are being robbed. A 504 is a civil rights plan. It was never intended to catch hundreds and thousands of kids in states for education. Because guess what's not happening in a 504? Any education. A 504 is simply a civil rights law from 1973 that says that your student with a disability cannot be discriminated against and denied accommodations. But we don't do that. We go and tell mom and dad, you don't want your kid to have that label. You don't want your kid in special ed. That'll go in his record. There's no record. It's a label. No, you know what labels go on? Packages. Eligibilities open the door for services for kiddos. And special ed intervention is not any different than medical intervention. If you went to the school and you said, hey, my son's supposed to have insulin once a day, and the school said, yeah, we're just going to keep an eye on him. We'll do it on Tuesdays. Would you be okay with that? No. So moms and dads and guardians, you have to stop taking this. You have to stop tutoring your kid at night and on the weekends. You're recusing the school from their responsibilities of special education. It is state funded, it is federally funded, and there's plenty of money. So this is not about money. This is how we appropriate money in school districts. And I'm from the great state of Texas, and this is a great state. And I can tell you for sure, every 7th grade boy in America has a brand new football jersey. What we care about, we fund, and what we fund, we focus on. A lot more children struggle with reading than will ever play a sport. And things have got to change. We want to support you. We want to help you. You can reach out to us at admin at Special Education Academy, but it's going to stop now. It got exposed during COVID, and during COVID, we saw the most amazing teachers that would lay down their life for kiddos. And we saw teachers that should probably have a different vocation, right? But we have to first start supporting the teachers. If a teacher comes to a principal, my gosh, you should say, thank you for letting me know, how can I support you? Instead of sending them away. Because the most amazing teachers, you're running out of town because you won't support them. And then you make it the parent and the advocate's fault. It says in the front page of the Dyslexia Handbook in Texas, from Rocket's Reading, and I'm just paraphrasing, it said children that are not robust readers it's unlikely they'll be successful as adults. Children that are not successful at reading, it's unlikely they'll be successful as adults. That's a problem. And that's a problem that has to stop today at the Tennessee Department of Education, because it's not going to go on. We're not going to leave it unsaid, and everybody's scared to say something. Parents, stop saying you have some great relationship with the school district. Stop thinking that you have to volunteer and laminate for 2 days. That has nothing to do with education. You've got to stand up and be the advocate for your child from kindergarten to 12th grade if need be, so that they can be successful, gainful employment, independent living, and further education. What I do know is children can learn when we give them the tools that they need and they're required to have in America under state and federal law. Thanks, you guys. If you need anything, let us know.
I came in this late. Can you kind of recap some of the stuff at the beginning?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm Mayer Cunningham, Special Education Boss. We train people all over the nation to be successful at the 504 IEP table. And the reports that we're getting from Tennessee on violation of federal and state special education law is unacceptable. I flew here today from Texas because so many people want a voice. They want somebody to stand up for them. And teachers are terrified. Teachers are terrified of their principals. Nobody does anything. We just send people away. We have these phrases. My kid can't read. My kid's 2, 3, 4 years behind. We have 5th graders that are reading at the 1st grade level, and the principal goes, he's making progress. No, he's probably going to end up in prison one day because he can't hold a job. So, and all we care about is the stupid state test. Nobody cares about the state test. We're so busy pressuring the teachers to pass the state test. There are kids in special ed are being denied. The other thing that we've set up in Tennessee is this ridiculous learning lab thing. That's the new thing. It sounds good, doesn't it? And we shove all of these special ed kids into a learning lab with one special ed teacher, kindergartners, 5th graders, all different needs, math, science, social studies, reading, and we wonder why they're not making progress. Because we're not going to fund pushing in a special ed teacher to the general ed classroom, and we're not going to fund pulling out. And it's unacceptable, and it's illegal, and it's not okay. And so parents have to invoke their legal rights. You have procedural rights that are on the state's website, your school district's website, and you have to invoke your rights. You have to stick the landing. When the school tells you no, you need to have them provide you a prior written notice of why they're denying your request. The law says that the school has an obligation to identify, locate, and evaluate children with suspected disabilities. And schools make parents go prove by a psychiatrist, a medical doctor, that they in fact have a disability. And then the schools tell them, well, that's clinical. That's clinical. So it's egregious, it's disgusting, it's illegal, and it's penalizing children to have a successful life. This behavior impacts them for the next 75 years after school, and it's not okay.
And what's going to be done now? What is the next step?
So the next step is we're going to keep coming here. We are requiring and requesting that the Tennessee Department of Education has a response to this. To not respond is to yell, and to not respond is to be culpable. The State Department of Education is not unaware of these problems. The school districts are not unaware. The superintendents that pay themselves 85% of the entire district pay, they're not unaware of this. We are running teachers out. Part of the mass exodus for teaching has to do with administration. Doesn't have to do with parents, because we do not support teachers, and we work them to death. And teachers come and ask for help, whether it's a general ed kiddo, a 504 kiddo, or a special ed kiddo, and we pat them on the head and say, you're doing a great job, go back to class. And these kids are failing. We call parents at home for kids that have a disability and say, oh, he's a behavior problem, you need to come pick him up. Yeah, come pick him up. You have to come pick him up. Parents believe that when a school says you have to, or that we have to, they think that they're telling them the law, and they're not. And the recklessness is out of control now. So I require my parents, when you tell me it's a law, a policy, a practice, a procedure, then you provide that to me in writing by close of business. You've got to come together as special ed parents and say enough is enough. It's got to stop.
So what's your parents think? Should we be contacting?
Sure. So in the meantime, they need to go to their school and simply say, my child is struggling educationally, which could be academics or anything. This is my formal request for my child to have special education testing. Areas of suspected disability are learning. If the school deny your testing, then you have procedural rights that are in the handbook the school gives you. But you have to evoke them. Do not go away. Your child is expecting you to advocate for them. Because sometimes, not always, but sometimes school districts don't, can't, or won't. Yes, is it special ed kiddos are the best kiddos. And special ed is not a bad thing. It's just like coaching. If your kid was going to be an athlete, we need to get him coaching. A special ed student just needs a little bit more than the general ed teacher can provide. It's not something bad. And they're not those kids. They're general ed kids. They're humans who have the same right to an educational benefit as every other child in the school district. And parents have got to stop paying for tutors, having their kids go to a tutor all weekend to make their kids still feel like a failure. The school will provide an educational benefit in any area that your child needs, functionally, behaviorally, or academically. Sorry,
Topic?
no, it's fine. Just had to start getting all the dirty looks. This guy, what are y'all gonna do? Whatever. He does.
Did it go off? Where?
Very much.
Yes.